How do you stay relevant in the ever changing world of work? How do you acquire the skills that you need to achieve new career goals? We're going to talk about one tool that you can use for that I'm a huge fan of. We're going to talk about self directed learning. Welcome to the Talk to Me PDD podcast. I'm your host, PDD. This is my podcast where I talk about leadership, people management, technology, AI, and all the things that make up the wonderful world of knowledge work today. This is episode 31, where we're going to do an introduction to self-directed learning and also talk about how you can leverage AI tools to help you in your own journey of self-directed learning. So to talk about self-directed learning, what that means to me, I think it's good to start off contrasting that with directed learning, where you have some structure around that or program that you're following. So many of us will be familiar with this through traditional schooling and education if we've gone through that, whether it's anywhere from kindergarten all the way through to high school, and then if you've gone on to undergraduate or graduate type programs, there's going to be a set structure that you're following, a set of core curriculum that likely everyone takes, and then some options to branch out from there. When you get into a undergraduate program, you're going to have some sort of specialization in your major, and that's going to give you a path that you follow in addition to that regular curriculum. It's all set out for you with the outcome being that you've have at least a base level of knowledge in a particular area, and then with the core curriculum that you've covered a core set of foundational pieces of knowledge. So that's probably the example that most people are familiar with. In the world of work, when you're joining a new company, there may be some onboarding training that you go through, both skilling and readiness in that regard, but also understanding company culture and how to operate within that environment. And again, that's all going to be laid out for you. Most of the time, you don't have to figure it out yourself. And the end goal of that being that you can get up to speed and at least start operating at a base level within that company. In the professional world, there's often continuing education or various types of learning paths that are going to help keep you up to date on particular developments or policy changes or culture changes within your company. So all of these, really, the work is just for you to go and do those things, and with the idea being that you'll achieve the outcomes that they're set up for. So these are all great tools, and you should take advantage of them. But they're not necessarily going to get you everything you need. They're not necessarily going to have the individual focus and skills development that you might desire for yourself. As always, you're going to be the person who's most invested in your career or your own personal development. And oftentimes, you need to go outside of that set learning path and figure out for yourself how you're going to develop skills that matter to you or matter for your goals or for your relevance or your own development, that fall outside of the paths that are provided for you. So that's when you get into self-directed learning. And really, that is defining your own learning path and defining the outcomes that you want to achieve, and then working back from those outcomes and figuring out what you need to do to build those skills and achieve that. And this can be pulling from the same type of courses or material that you would see in a directed learning path. The difference being you're sort of picking and choosing what you consume and what you pull in for your own goals. Um, for many working professionals, asynchronous type of learning is the most realistic. It can be difficult to carve time out of a day to show up at a class in a physical location for an extended period of time. But you often have some flexibility if you can do things at your own pace, at your own time, from a variety of locations. So those tend to be the easiest type of learning resources to consume on your own as a professional and when you're trying to build your own self-directed learning. It's not to say you can't use other ones, it's just from a logistics perspective, it can be more challenging. Many of you know that I'm a huge fan of reading in general and specifically for learning. I think that's a great tool for self directed learning. It's asynchronous, you can do it at your own pace, at your own time, pretty much anywhere you are. It has a lot of secondary benefits as well as the direct knowledge that you have. It's helping build critical thinking, it's helping build focus, it's helping build empathy, all skills that are relevant across the board and continue to be even while we're in a time of immense change in the industry. Um, Online courses are also very good. Now, there are different varieties. Some you can take that are pre-recorded and work through at your own pace, some that you do live. Again, it's going to depend on what your schedule will allow and what you're looking for. But there are many different platforms and many different resources. Lots of companies and organizations give their employees access to some of those platforms as a benefit. So definitely take a look at what's available to you and utilize those resources. Um, you can also follow industry news, and that's not necessarily going to give you a lot of learning or knowledge in and of itself, but it's going to provide a lot of breadcrumbs and ideas about what you may want to follow up on, where your industry is going, and finding different sources that you can go in and pursue at a deeper level as part of your self directed learning path, or just in general self directed learning, even if it's not directly related to a particular outcome that you're driving for. If you're in a technical space, or even if you're not a technical role but working in technology or a field that's impacted by technology or science or research, I think white papers are valuable resources as well. Looking at different research. Now, some of this can be very technical, and even if you have a technical background, it can be challenging to read through some of the details. But at least looking at abstracts, especially papers that you see referenced a lot. So, like for example, in the world of generative AI, there's a paper called "Attention Is All You Need," which it's about the transformer architecture, the T and GPT models. So, while it may be difficult to go and read through all of the math and technical details of that paper, you can just go read the abstract and you'll have a deeper sense of what's going on there. So I think those are good resources to pull in for many people, and then just decide what level of depth is appropriate for you. Um, if you're in an organization or within a company, there's likely internal documentation or white paper style or strategy documents. Those are worthwhile reading as well to keep up on the specific direction that your company is going, and that may shape where you want to focus your time and your learning, and just understanding sort of what the trend is and the cutting edge within your specific organization. Um, so, why is self directed learning so important? Um, we mentioned the rate of change in knowledge work and technology. This has been true for some time. Yes, we're in the age of rapid development and uncertainty with generative AI and AI. But even before that, I mean, you have the rise of cloud computing. It seemed like metaverse was going to take off at some point as various trends and um, kind of themes emerge in that industry. It's good to stay on top of them and understand what's happening, and use deeper skills in those areas to help move yourself forward and to stay relevant. Um, as a aside to that, there's a specific skills acquisition part of it, but there's also the mindset that you get as a self-directed learner, that you're able to go and face new challenges or enter domains where you don't necessarily know the space. But because you have a practice where you can go and figure out what your knowledge gaps are and then go and fill those on your own without waiting for someone else, it can be very empowering. And this is something that translates across domains, in my opinion. Um, if you're someone that is an athlete or trains to accomplish a athletic goal, a lot of time the way that you would think about structuring that training is very similar, to how you would structure more of an intellectual self-directed learning path. So if you're used to training for a marathon and you build out a running plan with different weekly progressions and recovery and figure out how to schedule that in, you can take that same methodology and apply it to any sort of skills acquisition. Um, if you have your own career goals, which most of us do, or just kind of professional goals, or maybe even a lateral move, um, there are usually going to be skills and experiences that you need in order to make those goals come true. Um, and there may be kind of defined paths that you can find to do that, but very often you're going to have to be able to look and see where you are, where you want to get to, and fill in those gaps, and then go and execute and achieve that learning, so you have that knowledge and you can make the transition or the advancement that you want to with that. And again, like I mentioned before, really no one is going to be as invested in this as you are. So you can go, I mean, you can talk to your manager or mentors, and I'm sure you will get support there. But they may not be able to kind of know all of the details of where you're at, and they can provide suggestions on where you might want to go and learn, but they're likely not going to put an entire plan together for you. Um, so now we've talked about sort of what self-directed learning is, comparing it to more traditional directed learning. We've talked a bit about the why, managing change, building new skills, advancing your career. Um, Now, next, we'll take a look at how some of the current AI tools can help you in your self-directed learning and moving forward. So the first part of self-directed learning is figuring out what your plan is. You need a plan and you need to kind of start at a high level and then get down to the details before you can go and start executing on that. I think AI is really helpful here. You can kind of give it a starting point and an end goal, and it can help you look at the space in between. So, for example, if you're looking to make a career move or a career change, you can provide some details about yourself, the skills and experiences that you have. And then often there will be kind of a role description, or you can describe what you're looking to get to. Um, and it can help you kind of see where those gaps are and where you might need some different skills or experience. And a real sort of specific and tactical way to do this is to take your resume and to take a job description that you might be interested in and give it those two things and say, hey, take a look at my resume. This is the job that I'm interested. Where are the gaps that I have? So that's kind of the first step, is to figure out where those gaps are. Um, then the second piece is building a roadmap of training from that. And then the last piece is going and executing on that training on your own. You can ask kind of generative AI to give you some of that path. And I think this is really interesting and I think a good use case for generative AI, because it's a conversation. You don't need the results to be exactly the same every time. And you can go in and provide context and sort of take what is seems useful for you and disregard anything that's else and iterate on it. You don't need it to give you an exact answer the first time. Um, Once you have sort of these gaps, it can help you find specific content that it might recommend. It could be training courses, it could be books, it could be a formal class. So again, just sort of iterate and try and narrow down from the high level gaps into kind of the material itself, and then some specific things that you can go and do. And you can do this at every level. You don't have to offload all of it to generative AI. And in fact, I wouldn't, but it can help you kind of get down into the specifics. So, for example, if there's a course, a type of course that you think would be relevant, but maybe you don't have the ability or logistically or financially to go and take the course, one of the things that I find really helpful is to give a generative AI chat, say, here's this course, and it could be a specific course or it could just be a type of course, and ask it, give me a list of recommended readings for this course or typical readings that are happened. And then you can go and take those and you can use those resources to fill in the knowledge that that course would have provided. And you're able to do it at your own pace, and you're able to sort of get a roughly equivalent experience, at least in terms of the content you're consuming for that. So that's one of the areas that I really like. And you can have it drill in and give you specific readings and then go and get those books or articles or whatever they are on your own. Now, it's maybe not going to get everything completely right, but it'll usually get you enough that you can get started. Um, the academic course pages for various courses are sometimes hard to navigate and find everything. So if you want to get a reading list, I've had success with this, or even for a program, say, hey, you know, what are some interesting what's some common reading in, let's say, an economics program at this university, or across a bunch of different universities, and give me the you know the most common reading that's recommended in those courses. And then instead of going and drilling down into all those places and compiling it, you get it in one suggestion, which I find is helpful. If you're working on a certification, which is sometimes part of self-directed learning in a particular area, it can help you there. If you have sort of some feedback on different parts of the certification and maybe you're struggling in some, I think that's used, you can provide it into the chat, and sometimes I can recommend other training that you can go and do. If you want to, you can even set it up for active recall. If you have a set of terms that you're trying to learn or questions, you can feed that in and have it ask you and give you feedback, and set up a different methodology for it if you want it to only ask you things that you're not getting right and that sort of thing. Of course, you can do active recall on your own with just pen and paper or note cards or things like that. But it's another interesting way to look at it, and something that you can play around with, which I think is helpful for learning. Um, when you're doing self-directed learning, one of the disadvantages is that you don't have an objective third party sort of assessing what you've done, your outcome, your retention of that knowledge, maybe the quality that you're producing. Let's say you were taking a coding class or even a writing class. I think this is an interesting use case. So putting in something that you've produced as a part of that, giving the chat session some context about what you're trying to produce, and then asking it to assess the result. And again, this is not exactly the same as having a human do it, but it's something that you can do on your own. It doesn't require any other resources and can give you some useful feedback about how you're doing on it. So that's kind of what I've got for today. I'm a huge fan of self-directed learning. This is the first part of a 3-part series. Next time, we'll go into self-directed learning specifically in the generative AI space. So we've talked about using tools today. This is going to be about sort of self-directed learning for skills and knowledge in the world of AI. And then in the third part, we'll talk a little bit about learning to learn and traditional education, and my thoughts on that in the world of AI, and how that the relevance changes there, or maybe it doesn't. So you'll have to wait till that to hear. So I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully this was helpful. Good luck in your self-directed learning. Reach out to me if there's anything that I could help with, and see you next time. Thanks.